Indiana also quarterback. Still have a quarterback race, sort of. There's no. I think that most of us, or virtually all of us, who watch the game, think that Indiana has their starting quarterback. Who I don't know if he'll be announced today or not, but there's no way they're not going to start Taven Jackson against Louisville.
That'd be a surprise, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's who they wanted it to be, needed it kind of to be, and he gave them a good enough reason the other night against a way overmatched Ohio State team. But the offenses looked better. I mean, the calls were better. Everything was better.
Yeah, I mean, to your point though, everything looks a lot better when you're playing a lower division opponent. I mean, just obviously not to crack on Indiana State, but there's a difference in FBS and FCS football. You have way more guys on scholarship on FBS. Just everything. You have all of the advantages. I mean, you should be better because of what you get at the FBS level versus what you get at the FCS level. So that's not being disrespectful, but it is a tough read to go from, all right, you're playing one of the best teams in the country to a team at a lower level. Like, what did you learn? Did everybody actually get better? What is reality, and what is for lack of a better term, smoke and mirrors? I mean, what is just a case of, all right, you're just dealing with a drastic downturn in competition. But I did think Taven looked sharp. Obviously, I think he made a lot of good throws. I thought the best throw he made was the one that got pulled back on the ineligible man downfield, the kind of fade ball.
Absolutely, and that was a bad call. That was a horrible call. The illegal man downfield. When I watched the video, it was like he looked like he was 5 yards down the field and not blocking anybody. It was
it's not a great call, but I mean, he was downfield. He was past the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure how far, what's the rule? How far
I thought you got like 5 yards, or there was like a little buffer that you got.
There's probably a buffer, but I don't know if it's 5 yards. So I don't know. I mean, I have not studied that portion of the rule book that closely.
And I think that play was actually a touchdown. They marked him down at the 1. They had to go back, I'm like, go back and look at that, because I think he hit and rolled over it, and that would have been an incredible play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but it was a gorgeous throw, and it was like, okay, he's got that in his bag. You're like, all right, like, and Sorsby's been okay. I mean, I don't think Sorsby played poorly. I think he has ultimately been, relatively sharp, 17 of 32. I mean, there's not too many bad throws in there. Taven's 19 of 26 so far. It's probably been a little bit sharper. Sorsby made, I thought, some good throws against Ohio State. It's not easy to, like, in terms of just fairness of competition, like, would you go out and say, like, okay, Sorby had every single opportunity and lost it? I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but you got to pick somebody. And, Taven was good enough against Indiana State that you can make him that somebody, and you can make that work. And obviously, I think from a, political recruiting standpoint, I think, to your point, you kind of want it to be Taven because you recruited him from Tennessee. So you want to be able to say, hey, if we bring you in from this really big school, you're going to get a chance to start. And so it works on a lot of levels for it to be Taven. He's Trace's, little brother, like all of that stuff, helps the cause. So if Taven's ahead, it's almost like Sorsby has to win it by a little bit, to get it over Taven. But I mean, at some point you got to pick a guy, and it makes sense for him to be the guy. And, now obviously things can go wrong. Taven can hit a rough patch. Sorsby might get another shot at it. He can get hurt. A lot of things can happen. And I think, Sorsby's shown you enough positives that you don't feel bad throwing him in. It's obviously, which means he's come a long way. Because you got to remember a year ago when they threw Sorsby in, I mean, it was rough. And obviously it was only in for a drive, but it was very much okay, this guy is a true freshman and he has not had a chance yet. And, what is he doing here? Because it's like, I don't know why they put him in before Dexter Williams last year, but I mean, he's clearly, just grown into the position, grown into being a guy, being a redshirt freshman, and a guy that you can trust to throw out there if you need to. So that is a generally positive development, I think, for Indiana. I mean, like, I don't know that you look and say, well, these two guys can win me games, or, they can be the reason we win, but they might not be the reason you lose.
Yeah, it will be. Next week is going to be big in a lot of ways.
telling.
not only the game itself, how important that it is for Indiana, but it will be telling for not just the quarterback, the offensive line, the defensive secondary. I don't have any qualms with the defensive front and the linebackers. I think they're just solid. If Indiana their secondary can show that they can hang with Louisville, they're going to be in for a really good season and put Indiana in some good positions. And if Indiana can move the ball and score offensively, man, this could turn into a different season than what I expected. Not one where I think they're going to, go to a gigantic bowl, but they could get to a bowl. Beating Louisville is the first step. I've said that many times, because there are some winnable games after that at the bottom rung teams in the Big Ten East, whether it's Michigan State, which we talked about that, Rutgers, Maryland.
Michigan State's in a place.
Boy, they never can get out of their own. They can't get out of their own way. It seems like.
I mean, this one is the doozy of all doozies. I mean, that one broke at 12:45, and you're like, am I really reading these words? Like, is this possible? Like, I had a couple of drinks today. I mean, like, I'm not hallucinating this, am I? Like, I'm really Mel Tucker. He did what? He admitted he did what? Like,
yes, he admitted right. I mean, you got to give him that, man.
You don't got to give him anything. You don't got to give Mel Tucker anything. Even if you give him every benefit of the doubt on this, it's bad. Even if you're like, well, still bad. Like, I don't give him the benefit of the doubt on everything. And even if you do give him the benefit of the doubt on everything, it's bad. I mean, I think the wording they used was unprofessional conduct, and it's unprofessional conduct. Even if you're saying that Brenda Tracy is denying that it was in fact consensual, and she's lying about it being consensual. Even if you say it was, it's still bad.
Absolutely.
Like, he's married. He's bringing this woman in to teach his team about
players. He was an anti-rape activist.
Yeah, it's bad. It's just bad to start with. Like,
that just shows you how dumb. I mean, that just shows you how dumb
it's
somebody
remarkable.
is.
It's remarkable. And again, like, innocent until proven guilty. They obviously had to adjudicate and go through this. And I've had to cover sexual assault cases before, unfortunately, while covering college football. It's certainly, and when I covered Tennessee, there was someone else, a different woman, and I'm blanking on her name, which is really a shame, because she was really good to me as far as being a helpful source in talking about through this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, there are several women who are doing this because and I say that to say it's unfortunate that several women have been through something that gives them expertise on it. It's certainly sad that it's been going on this long, has been going on forever. And there are enough people that have had this tragic experience and had tragic experience close to football teams that can speak to it and tell players to do better. But yeah, of all people, you're like, what, are you serious? How can you and again, don't know who did what. There's an innocent proven guilty aspect of this, but you're just like, oh wow, that's bad. And again, even if you're granting him every benefit of the doubt, it's still bad, and I don't grant him every benefit of the doubt, from a personal standpoint. But yeah, so that obviously makes Michigan State more vulnerable, in the much less important piece of the discussion. And so yeah, and if Indiana gets going against Louisville, they've got a shot. There are a few winnable games out there, but I think, Zach Osman wrote this a few times, basically that game one was going to be against too good of an opponent for them to really tell, and game two was against too good of an opponent for them to really tell. And so, like, I'm not at the point where I'm like, well, they got a shot. I mean, like, I still lean to they're going to lose to Louisville and that they're going to be a 4-win team. But it's just like, so you can prove to me otherwise. And Louisville would be the start of that, of showing you have the capacity to beat, a legit team that is on your level, close to your level, maybe better than what is considered your level at this point. Being able to do it, it's not a neutral site because you're closer to, but there are Louisville fans in Indianapolis. So it's it's not in your arena, it's not in your stadium. So,
if you open up as a 10-point dog in Indianapolis,
they're a 10-point dog.
They're
Yeah.
a 10-point dog. That, I mean, we're not talking a 3-point game here. That 10 points, Vegas feels very comfortable
Sure.
with Louisville coming in and winning that game. And I get it, because the one thing I said, whether I thought it was going to be Sorsby and should have been Sorsby, but it doesn't matter who. It should have been someone before game one, because what they've done is they've cut the snaps of who this is in half. David Jackson will probably start against Louisville, but he got half the snaps he could have gotten in preparing, and he needed it desperately, or whomever needed it desperately.
On the flip side, they've had to change quarterbacks enough times that it's not the worst thing in the world that the other guy got a bunch of snaps. I mean, 6 of one, half dozen the other. I mean, like you can make the argument that, they have, when they've picked a guy, they've ended up having to play another guy who wasn't ready, and so there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this. I mean, you first off, you'd have to presume that if you're playing Indiana State, you're going to play 2 quarterbacks, in that game. Like, you should get somebody work against Indiana State, and you kind of presume that you're going to give somebody to, snaps against Ohio State, because you're going to get beat that bad. I mean, I think that's kind of presumed going in. I don't think it's a crazy idea if you're Tom Allen to say, well, I would probably have to play 2 guys anyway, because I got to presume that, I'm going to lose Ohio State, and I'm going to lose it big. And, I should get, reps for my second guy. If I'm going to be in that position anyway, why don't give them both a shot? One. And when it comes to, Indiana State, I should win that game big. So I should be giving a guy, my second teamer snaps anyway. Why not make them snaps when they matter? If I'm already going to be doing it, and so obviously there's something to be said about rhythm and whatnot. But I get, if you really don't feel like you know who your guy is, I don't think you've put yourself behind the 8 ball all that much. It's better to choose a guy. But if you don't know, you don't know. And it's a tough situation. I mean, like, certainly if I was a beat writer, I'd rather have the name, just because you can write about it and everything. But I get the idea. If you really don't feel confident knowing who it is yet, I don't think it sets you back that bad that both of them got snaps the first 2 games, and there's a benefit from that in the long term too.